Hi everyone, so if you remember in the last video I made this preacher sculpture. This is the preacher from Beetlejuice. This is from the wedding scene where Beetlejuice is getting married to Lydia. And what you need to do first of all is, once the clay has been baked in the oven, and you bake it on 130 degrees centigrade for half an hour and then leave it to cool. So once it's cooled down, then it's ready for painting, and I'm using acrylic paint here. And I'm coating the whole thing in a layer of black first of all. Most of the colour of this character is black and grey anyway, but also it tones down the colours and gives it that sort of more gothic vibe, which I like. And then for the face, what I did is I mixed a dark grey. Obviously it looks a lot lighter than the black, but it is still a dark grey. And dry brush that over the top. What you need to do is load your brush up, but then wipe off most of the paint off your brush until it's almost dry, and then apply that over the figure. That makes all those lovely details that you put into the clay stand out. All the little lines and grooves and wrinkles, it makes them really stand out very well, and just shows that detail off. And his face is a sort of bluey grey colour anyway. I know in the film he looks a bit green at one point because there's a green light shining on him from the background, but when I've seen the actual animatronic puppet head that they used for the film, it is a bluey grey. So what I'm doing here is I'm mixing a grey, and each layer I put on is lighter than the last. And I'm dry brushing it, and I'm also adding just a touch of blue to the mixture just to give it that sort of bluey black colour. And then I think I did about 4 layers if I remember right, and each layer was progressively lighter, and that the last layer was almost white, and that was just for the very, very highlights at the end, the bits I wanted to stand out the most. And don't forget that acrylic paint does dry a shade darker than the colour you applied. So this looks really light at the moment, but as it's dried it is more of a bluey grey. And I'm just making sure those wrinkles stand out, and that tooth in his face, and also the details of his hands. Even though they're not very good hands, I can't sculpt hands. Then once I'd done the layers on the face, then the next thing to do was apply the light bluey grey to the hems of his suit jacket. He's got this like banding or beading or whatever it is around the edge of his coat, which is a light bluey grey colour. I did this a light grey, slightly different grey to the skin tone because I didn't want it to match exactly. And if you're wondering why I haven't painted the bottom of his feet, I am making him a display to put him on as well, so I'm not too worried about painting the bottom of his feet because he's going to be attached to a base at some point. I'm going to make like a little diorama type scene thing for him to go on. So here I'm just going around all that tubing, that beading, or the hem of his jacket. And I'm just doing that very loosely with this big brush, and then going in later on, filling in any gaps with a small brush, and then touching up any areas of black where I've accidentally smudged the light grey colour onto. I just found this was a quicker way of doing it, and it just saved me some time. It just means I have to do some touch-ups later on, but that's no problem. So as you can see, he's starting to show his details now. And then I took a small brush and just went around the rest of that, like piping or tubing or whatever it is, just like the hem of his jacket. I don't know what the proper name for it is. And I'm just making sure I've painted all of it and there's no gaps. Then once I left those first couple of layers to dry, then it was time to paint his book, and I've used a yellow ochre mixed with some white for this. I wanted the pages to look like they'd yellowed, like the book's old. It's been in the underworld for a long time, so it's going to be a bit old and a bit battered. And the reason I painted the book black to start off with is because the black tones down the colours and it gives it that sort of muted look, which is what I was going for. I don't want the book to look like it's brand new or anything. And you'll see I go over the area a couple of times and I touch up the black where I've accidentally got some of that beigey colour over the black, just touching up the edges where the cover of the book is, because it's quite fiddly to paint that without getting any on the edges of the book. And then at first I was going to leave the ribbon bookmark that goes through the middle, I was going to leave that black, but then I changed my mind and I remembered like quite a few old books have like red ribbons in them that I've seen, so I thought the red would go really nice with the black. It's not film accurate, but I don't care, this was just my little touch I wanted to add to it. Don't mind the smudges, I'll cover that up later on. And it took about 3 layers of the red, because my red paint's not very good, it's just some old acrylic paint I'm using up. I just like that little splash of red just to add a spot of colour so he's not completely two-tone. And then just took a bit of the beige colour and touched up the pages of the book where I'd smudged the red. I also mixed a bit of grey with the beige colour, and you'll see later on I go over where the creases are for the pages in the book, just to make sure that it stands out, that it looks like there's pages as opposed to one solid block of clay. So I'm just going through the grooves, just making the pages stand out more, and then wiped off the excess with my finger and then touched up the edges of each page with the beige colour again, just to make those little crevices stand out a bit more, to give a bit more detail. The writing I put on the book on the inside didn't show up very well once it was painted, but I wasn't too worried about that. And then I added a little bit of detail to his shoes. Now I couldn't see in the film or anything what his shoes looked like, so I've just done a very basic shoe, and then I just highlighted where the little shoelace was that I've put on. And I also used a bit of dry brushing just to make the wrinkles in his trousers show up. I wanted it to look like his trousers are a bit too long for him because the character's very short in the film. And I also dry brushed over the shoes a little bit just to get the shoes to stand up a bit, to stand out a bit, so you can see the details. I also dry brushed a little bit where the creases are in his jacket, just to try and make those show up a little bit more as well. And then the last thing I did was I applied another layer of black paint to his eye sockets to make them darker, because the paint had dried quite pale, so I wanted to add another layer just to darken it a bit. I do think the eye sockets look a bit better glossy, so I might put a bit of resin in there at some point. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.